Most of this week we have followed Paul's somewhat convoluted argument about the nature and consequences of sin, leading up to a discussion of the reality of grace. It has not been a pretty journey. Beginning with his use of the word wrath to describe God's reaction to sin, to his winding route through a discussion of wrath taking the form of suffering the natural consequences of sin, to a somewhat confusing discussion of law, both the law of Moses and the law written on the hearts of all people, it has frankly been a pretty depressing journey. But today we get to the payoff, and it is good news indeed. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. The upshot of Paul's discussion so far is this, that both Jews and Gentiles are accountable for their actions because both know the will of God, Jews through the law of Moses, Gentiles through what Paul calls the law written on their hearts, or what we might call natural law. The law serves to put a spotlight on the reality of sin, and to some extent, curb our sinful tendencies. And it also serves to put a spotlight on the perfection of God. This is what Paul has been saying so far. Now he makes a decisive move, a change of direction in his argument. Here's what he says next. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been disclosed, and is attested by the law and the prophets, the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ for all who believe. For there is no distinction, since all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. They are now justified by His grace as a gift, through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God put forward as a sacrifice of atonement by His blood, effective through faith. He did this to show His righteousness, because in His divine forbearance He had passed over the sins previously committed. It was to prove at the present time that He Himself is righteous, and that He justifies the one who has faith in Jesus. Then what becomes of boasting? It is excluded. By what law? By the law of works? No, but by the law of faith. For we hold that a person is justified by faith apart from works prescribed by the law. Or is God the God of Jews only? Is He not the God of Gentiles also? Yes, of Gentiles also, since God is one, and He will justify the circumcised on the ground of faith, and the uncircumcised through that same faith. Do we then overthrow the law by this faith? By no means. On the contrary, we uphold the law. Isn't that a great move on Paul's part? Without his rather depressing discussion of human sin and God's wrath, this part of his letter would not shine through with as much brilliance. If he set this discussion against the backdrop of other good things, it simply would not stand out. But set against a somewhat dark background, it really shines forth. The essence of it is that sin is truly universal. That is, it affects all of us alike. And on our own, even with the guidance of the law, we're unable to extricate ourselves from sin's grasp. But now, rather than using the tool of the law to free us, God has done for us what the law simply could not do. That is, God has taken the initiative to justify us. That is, to set us right with God without our having had to fulfill the law's stringent requirements. In a word, grace. It's all about grace. Now, instead of righteousness gained through the law of Moses or the law written on the heart, faith becomes in effect a new law, and its only requirement is to trust that in Jesus Christ, God has redeemed us from our captivity to sin. And with that, the law is gone for good, right? Not so fast. As we'll see, there is still a major role for law to play. but we'll get to that next week. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.